Tonight at the JFK Library in Boston, the crowds having waited for hours to pay their respects to Edward M. Kennedy, the man they sent to the Senate 9 times, who served them in that capacity for nearly 5 decades. Good evening from New York. 1 year ago this month, as he was undergoing a chemotherapy treatment, Senator Kennedy, having read in a newspaper about 2 servicemen from the same small town in Massachusetts who had been killed in Iraq and Afghanistan, respectively. "We are going down there," he said, to pay a call on the families. And when his treatment had ended, despite the fact that his treatment had just ended, that's exactly what he did. He hugged everyone, he pet the dogs, and recalling his oldest brother, Joe, the pilot who had been shot down in World War II, he counseled the families on getting through their grief. "The first year is the hardest," one soldier's mother remembers him saying. "The first birthday, the first anniversary, the holidays. The pain will never go away," he told them, "but it will be easier to bear." Our 5th story in the countdown: if only the Kennedys of Hyannisport today had had the senior senator from Massachusetts to pay a call on them. The day beginning with a private mass for the family, after which an honor guard carried the coffin of Senator Kennedy to the hearse. The casket then traveling the 72 miles from the Cape to Boston. The motorcade, 85 members of the Kennedy family in all, winding around city landmarks that had been important to the senator, including the church where his mother had been baptized and the park dedicated in her honor. Faneuil Hall, where the city's mayor rang that structure's historic bell 47 times, once for each year that Kennedy served as senator for Massachusetts. The JFK Federal Building, where his office has been for decades. And finally, the library, dedicated to his brother's presidency. Some people leaving mementos ahead of Senator Kennedy's arrival at the JFK Library, and one man impulsively taking off the Boston Red Sox cap from his own head, telling a reporter that, quote, "it just seemed appropriate to leave a cap in honor of Teddy's favorite team." The funeral mass will take place Saturday at Our Lady of Perpetual Help Basilica in Boston. Senator Kennedy to be buried that night at Arlington National Cemetery outside Washington, near the graves of his brothers. Senator Kennedy having told friends recently that he was looking forward to a reunion with his 7 late siblings, especially his 3 brothers, all of whose lives had been cut short, the first of whom he had lost 65 years ago. Congressman Bill Delahunt of Massachusetts, a friend of the senator's, telling the New York Times, quote, "When he gets there, he can say, 'I did it. I carried the torch. I carried it all the way.'" Lots to talk about tonight with our own Andrea Mitchell, who's in Boston. Thanks for being with us. Good evening, Andrea.
You bet. My pleasure. It's an extraordinary moment here at the Kennedy Library.
Is it probable, based on how quickly that moment has been reached and how precisely that the senator had a hand in planning the events we are now seeing unfold?
Oh, I think so. They had plenty of time, plenty of warning. Up until the last weeks and days, he was really active. He was reading his briefing materials. Then it got really, really bad. And as Vicki Kennedy told Joe Biden, and you can hear we're right under the flight path for Logan Airport, as she said to the vice president, he was ready to go. The family, though, I have to tell you, this has been so beautifully organized, and the fact that they would come out and walk this line, we saw Caroline Kennedy exchanging, thoughts and thanks and prayers with people along the line, Bobby Kennedy Jr., all of them, down to the littlest grandchild and great-nephew and great-niece. They are thanking people along this line as thousands have lined up waiting to go in. You don't see a big crowd behind me because they come up in groups. They're escorted up in groups to go inside. And when I was here at the opening of this great library and memorial for Jack Kennedy, when we had Jackie Kennedy Onassis and John Jr. and Caroline and, of course, Teddy, and now all but Caroline are gone.
Certainly the sadness is not absent from the family, but there seems to be an intent, as you imply there, to make it a real celebration of the senator's life. Is that also part of his planning for this? Were those his final marching orders to them about what to do in this situation in public?
I think so, and I think that they so understand him that, Vicki Kennedy, who really is the love of his life, knew that he wanted to be in Hyannisport. He wanted to be sailing. He wanted to be with his dogs and his children and grandchildren in these final weeks and final days. So she organized really the care, and then when the care was clearly not going to change the outcome, the final days that were really more of a hospice situation, frankly. But he was where he wanted to be when he finally went. But, you know, there will be a lot of sentimental moments. You pointed out the landmarks, and passing St. Stephen's, where his mother Rose was baptized and then had the funeral mass. He was so close to his mother, and she was such an extraordinary influence on him. This has been overwhelming in the public celebration of a life, the only Kennedy brother who lived a full life of 77 years, not as long as we would have wanted or they would have wanted, but did not, as David Von Verley wrote in Time magazine today, did not become mythic because of his death. It was merely his life that defined him. But I have to tell you, in talking to some of the nephews and the children and the grandchildren, the Kennedy family members that I've known here, and siblings, this is very, very painful for Gene Smith and for Ethel Kennedy. Gene, the last surviving member of that original family. This is a period of mourning. They are grieving deeply.
Andrea Mitchell in Boston, who has answered all of our questions and anticipated so many more. Great thanks for that and for this insight into this extraordinary day. We'll talk to you over the weekend. Thanks.
You bet.